So, picture this scenario first. It is a Wednesday in mid-February. You are, deep in that midday slump.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you are avoiding an email you really don't want to send,
Right.
or maybe you just need a brain. So you are doing the doom scroll. You know the exact one.
I'll know it.
Your thumb is just on total autopilot. You are swiping past the usual chaos of the internet, like a cat video or recipe for some complicated sourdough bread you are absolutely never going to bake.
Right.
Maybe a sponsored ad for those socks that supposedly never slip down your heel. You are in a total trance, and then suddenly your thumb just stops.
Because your brain registers something that just does not make sense.
Exactly. It is like this glitch in the Matrix. It's a collision of two completely distinct universes that really have no business occupying the same pixelated square on your screen. On the one hand, you have Gwen Stefani.
The icon.
Right, the Just a Girl anthem singer. The woman who basically, she essentially invented 90s ska punk cool.
Yeah.
We are talking about the crop tops, the bindies, the massive attitude, the whole no doubt rebellion aesthetic.
She is a massive defining pop culture figure. For a certain generation, she is the literal epitome of the alternative scene.
Yeah. And on the other hand, you have Hallow, which is the #1 Catholic prayer and meditation app in the entire world.
Yeah.
And they are not just, sitting next to each other in the feed. They are actively collaborating.
It is a sponsored video.
It is. Gwen is looking right at you, the viewer, and she has this dark, smudgy cross of ash right on her forehead.
Ash Wednesday.
Correct. And she's pitching a Lent prayer challenge. Now, usually celebrity endorsements are just boring. We are super used to them. Drink this soda or wear these sneakers.
Or buy my crypto.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But this completely broke people's brains. The internet did not just scroll past this one. They stopped, they stared, and then they got really angry.
And not just from one corner of the internet either. I think that is what makes this specific case study so incredible. Usually when a celebrity steps into some kind of controversy, the fire comes from one specific, predictable direction.
That is the wildest part of this whole thing. Gwen Stefani somehow managed to achieve the rare double backlash.
The double backlash.
Yeah, she had secular fans screaming that she was a traitor and a scammer. And then simultaneously, she had religious hardliners screaming that she was a fake and just this, performative, shrewd business.
It is the ultimate damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. And it really exposes something fascinating about how we view fame, faith, and specifically money.
So that is our mission for this deep dive today. We are going to completely unpack this strange cultural moment. We are calling it the pay-to-pray country
I like that title.
thing. We are going to look at the actual economics of this Hallow app, which, by the way, is way bigger than I realized before we started looking into the sources. And we are going to ask why the intersection of celebrity, money, and religion makes everyone completely lose their mind.
There is actually a term for it that popped up in the source material. They called it Hallow derangement syndrome.
Hallow derangement syndrome. It sounds like a genuine medical diagnosis.
It really does.
So let us just get right into it. Let us start with the actual incident itself. What specifically happened to kick this hornet's nest over?
Well, it all centers on this one very specific piece of content that was released on Ash Wednesday. It was a promotional clip for Hallow's Lent Challenge. And when we say video, we really need to manage it here.
Yeah, we do.
We are not talking about a polished documentary or some long-form, intimate interview.
No, it is a blip. It is a blink and you miss it blip.
It is exactly 11 seconds long.
11 seconds. I have honestly sneezed for longer than that.
Yeah.
I've had hiccups that lasted longer than the source material for this entire controversy.
Exactly. So in the clip, Gwen is just facing the camera. She says, "Hey, everyone, I just got my ashes and I'm ready for Lent." She mentions she is doing the 40-day challenge, tells people to go check it out. Boom. Done. That is the entire article.
And we really have to talk about this because the sources were absolutely merciless about it. The production value is a little weird, wasn't it?
It was a highly questionable choice, to say the least.
I watched it a few times just to make sure my phone speakers were not broken. As she starts talking, this incredibly dramatic, swelling cello music kicks in.
Right.
And it does not just play in the background like nice, calming elevator music.
Yeah.
It rises. It gets louder and louder. By the end of those 11 seconds, she is almost actively fighting to be heard over this massive orchestral wall of sound.
It is incredibly ironic. Hallow's entire selling point is high-quality audio content.
Yeah.
They pride themselves on these immersive soundscapes and really calming narration. And here, in their huge celebrity reveal video, it sounds like the audio engineer just fell asleep on the volume fader.
One of the comments we found in the research literally said, "Is the goal to deafen us into repentance?"
That is pretty fun.
It is a funny detail, and maybe it seems a bit trivial, but I think it shows just how closely people were scrutinizing every single frame of this. When you are a celebrity stepping into the realm of religion, people are not just passively listening to your word. They are analyzing the lighting, the makeup, the sound mix, and, of course, the ashes themselves.
Ah, yes, the great ash placement discourse of 2024. This was a rabbit hole I really did not expect to go down when reviewing the sources.
Well, I honestly did not even know this was a thing. I thought ashes were just ashes. Dirt is dirt. But apparently there was a whole heated sidebar argument about how she wore them on her face.
Right, so context is really key here. If you grew up in the United States, specifically in a Catholic or Anglican or even some Methodist environment, you know the exact drill on Ash Wednesday.
Yeah, you go up to the front of the church.
Exactly. You go up, the priest or the minister dips his thumb in the bowl of ashes, and he marks a very distinct cross on your forehead,
saying, "Remember you are dust, and to dust you shall return."
Right. It is a highly visible mark. You walk around the grocery store or the office or the coffee shop later that day, and everyone knows exactly where you have been. It is a public declaration.
But the internet, being the internet, a viral thread started gaining traction, claiming that this forehead cross is somehow performative.
Formative.
Yeah, performative how? Exactly. Like she is just doing it for attention.
Well, the argument was based on global differences in church liturgy. In other parts of the world, places like Brazil or even very frequently in the Vatican itself with the Pope, they do not smear the ash directly on your face.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they sprinkle the dry ashes on top of your head. It is much subtler, it is more private, it just kind of disappears into your hair.
So the critique online was, look at these flashy American celebrities putting the ash right on the middle of their face so everyone sees how holy and devout they are.
Exactly. Which, as the sources point out, is honestly a massive stretch and reveals a pretty deep lack of understanding of local customs.
It feels like the definition of extreme nitpick.
It absolutely is. Gwen Stefani is an American.
Yeah.
She is living in an American context. She is simply doing what American Catholics do on that day.
Right.
If she had sprinkled them on her head, the comment section probably would have been completely filled with people asking, where are her ashes? Is she faking it? Does she just draw a smudge with her eyeliner?
You literally cannot win. If you show the ashes, you are performative. If you hide the ashes, you are fake.
You really cannot win. But this nitpicking about the ashes and the loud cello music, that was really just the appetizer. The main course was the intense moral outrage. And that came from the secular side first. This is where things got really, really...
This is the whole pay to pray narrative.
Correct. That phrase became the immediate rallying cry.
And that slogan caught on so fast, pay to pray. I mean, it rhymes, it is punchy, and it implies something deeply nefarious. It sounds like she is out there selling indulgences in the Middle Ages. You know, give me $10 and I will get your grandma out of purgatory.
That is exactly the historical vibe they were going. The backlash here was incredibly visceral. We are not just talking about people saying, hey, this isn't for me, I am not a religious person.
Yeah.
We are talking about people using words like abhorrent and morally reprehensible.
There was one specific comment that really stuck with me from the source material. It was from someone who claimed to be a longtime fan, and you could feel the genuine emotional hurt in the text. They wrote that Gwen was profiting off of punk rebellion, multiculturalism, and diversity to become a millionaire, and then stabbing us in the back.
Stabbing us in the back. I mean, that is heavy, highly emotional language. That is the language you use during a bad...
Another one literally said, lock her up in a psych ward urgently.
We have to pause and really look at the psychology going on there. Why does an 11-second video about giving something up for Lent equate to a literal stab in the back? Why does it warrant calling for a psych?
It has to be about the tribe, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It is all about identity politics.
It is 100% tribalism. Think about who Gwen Stefani actually is to a certain generation of people.
Right.
She was not just a generic pop star. She was the no doubt front woman. She was the definition of alternative. She hung out with the skaters and the punk rockers in Orange County.
Yeah, she represented a total rejection of the stuffy establishment.
Exactly. She was the antidote to that very preppy, conformist culture of the late 90s and early 2000s.
And there is basically no establishment more stuffy, more traditional, or more conformist in the eyes of a punk rocker than the Catholic Church.
Precisely. It represents the ultimate rigid authority structure. So for a secular fan who maybe has a lot of personal trauma, really, or who views religion as the enemy of social progress and freedom, seeing their cool rebel icon aligning with that world feels like a purse trail.
Yeah, it is not just that she happens to be religious in her private life. It is that she actively went over to the other team.
But then, of course, you add the money into the mix.
Right, because if she was just quietly going to church on a Sunday and some paparazzi happened to snap a blurry photo of her, maybe they would just ignore it.
Right.
But she is selling it. She is doing a literal SpawnCon deal for Lent, and that allows the critics to completely bypass any theological discussion and just say, see, it is a grift, it's a scam. She does not actually believe this stuff. She just wants the paycheck.
Which naturally brings up the political angle, because we cannot ignore the human rights argument that was completely flooding the comment sections. This was not just about punk rock ethics. It was heavily about politics.
No. That is a huge part of the secular angle. The logic basically goes like this. Hallow is a Catholic app. The Catholic Church is officially doctrinally pro-life and opposes abortion. Therefore, if you promote the Hallow app, you're actively promoting an anti-abortion agenda.
And checking the facts from our source material, we have to ask, does the app actually have that kind of political content? Or is it just people breathing and meditating?
Well, according to the sources, it does. It is not the entire app, obviously. There are a lot of sleep stories and Gregorian chants and ambient noise.
Right.
But the source confirms there are specific prayers for mothers of unplanned pregnancy and content that directly aligns with the church's stance on the sanctity of life. So the critics are not just hallucinating this the connection is app there.
But the reaction was framing it as, I think the exact quote from the source was, a scheming plot to take away human rights.
Yeah, it turns Gwen Stefani into a political operative. Instead of a singer who is just trying to pray during Lent, she becomes this cash-grabbing opportunist who is actively working to dismantle women's rights.
It completely strips her of any human nuance. It assumes that if you touch the app, if you interact with it in any way, you completely own every single political implication of the theology behind it.
So that is the secular side of the backlash. They hate the religion, they hate the politics, and they think the money proves it is all totally fake. And you would think then, looking at that the religious folks would be cheering her on. You know, yay, Gwen is one of us. Welcome to the team. We finally have a superstar.
You would think basic logic would definitely dictate that, but human nature is just never that.
Which brings us to the purity test. This honestly surprised me the most when reading the research. I fully expected the atheists to be mad. I did not expect a devout Catholic.
It is the Hallow derangement syndrome coming from inside the house. The religious critics had a completely different set of grievance. They did not think she was a traitor to punk rock. They thought she was a traitor to Catholicism.
How so? I mean, she is literally on their screens promoting Lent. What more do they possibly want from her?
Well, first, there's the shrewd business. This is basically the mirror image of the secular. The religious hardliners look at her and they say, okay, she is taking the big Hallow check. But why isn't she
speaking out about what exactly?
About the hard stuff, about abortion, about traditional marriage, about the actual difficult doctrine. They see her public silence as cowardice.
Oh, I see.
They think she just wants the cool Catholic aesthetic, you know, the ashes, the mystery, the beautiful stained glass imagery. But she does not want the social stigma of actually defending the church's teachings at a Hollywood dinner party. They think she is playing it incredibly safe to protect her secular brand.
So to the secular world, she is way too Catholic.
Yeah.
But to the Catholic world, she is not nearly Catholic enough.
Precisely. She is stuck right in the middle of no man. And there is actually a very recent precedent for this with the Hallow app. Do you remember the whole Liam saga?
Oh, vaguely, yeah. I remember seeing his face plastered on the App Store a while back. He was the voice of, what was it, God? Or C.S. Lewis?
He was doing the audio readings for the C.S. Lewis content on the app. And Liam Neeson obviously has that incredible gravitas.
Oh.
It was a massive get for Hallow from a sheer marketing perspective. Having an A-list actor doing your readings, huge. But Liam Neeson is also very publicly, very vocally pro-choice. He has actually actively campaigned for repealing abortion bans in Ireland.
Oof, yeah, I could see how that would go over with the core user base of a traditional Catholic app.
It went over like a literal lead balloon. The users completely revolted. They flooded the reviews. They said, how can you take subscription money from us, faithful Catholics, and use it to pay this guy who actively opposes our most fundamental moral values?
Wow.
It was a massive, massive headache for the Hallow executives. And they eventually had to back off. They quietly parted ways with him and removed his content from the platform.
So the religious critics are looking at Gwen Stefani and asking, is she just another Liam Neeson? Is she a wolf in clothing?
Right. But Gwen is savvier than that, or at least quieter. She stays completely silent on the actual policy issue. She does not give the big magazine interviews about legislation. So she hasn't been canceled by the app's user base yet, but that deep suspicion definitely remains among the heart.
And then we really have to talk about the marriage thing, because the internet lawyers really came out of the woodwork for this one.
Oh, yes. The canon law experts of Twitter. They are a very, very vocal bunch.
Right, so let's set the stage. Gwen was married to Gavin Rossdale, the lead singer of the band Bush, for a very long time. They had a very public, very messy divorce. Then a few years later, she married Blake Shelton, the country music star.
And in the eyes of the Catholic Church, marriage is a sacrament. It is permanent. It is literally until death do us part. You cannot just get a civil divorce, get remarried, and continue to receive communion in good standing, unless
you get an annulment. Now, for the listener who did not go to a strict Catholic school, or who maybe thinks an annulment is just a fancy religious word for a regular divorce. Can you explain what that actually is? Because it seems like a minor technicality, but according to the sources, it is a huge deal.
It is technically very, very different from a divorce. A civil divorce is a legal ending of a marriage contract. It says, we were legally married and now we are not. An annulment, on the other hand, is a formal decree from a church tribunal. And it says, because of some specific defect at the exact time of the wedding, maybe it was severe immaturity, maybe a lack of full free consent, maybe dishonesty about wanting to have children, a true, valid, sacramental marriage never actually in the first place.
Wow, that sounds incredibly complicated and honestly pretty invasive.
It is incredibly complicated and deeply invasive. It involves gathering witnesses, writing extensive testimony, digging up old psychological profiles, reviewing personal letters and emails from decades ago.
Jeez.
It can take years to complete. It is absolutely not a rubber stamp you just buy at the church gift shop.
And our source points out something really crucial here regarding Gwen Stefani. She actually did this.
She did. She went through the entire rigorous tribunal process to get her first marriage formally annulled so she could marry Blake Shelton inside.
Which brings up a really fascinating counterpoint to all those religious critics who call her performative. If she was just a fake religious person doing it for the cool aesthetic, why on earth would she bother with all that insane paperwork?
Exact. If she genuinely did not care about the theology, she would have just got married on a beautiful beach in Malibu, had a great celebrity party, and not worried for a single second about what the Pope or the Canon Law Tribunal thought.
Yeah.
The fact that she willingly submitted herself to that grueling bureaucratic nightmare suggests she actually takes the theology seriously. She desperately wanted to be right.
But for the purity testers online, that is still not enough.
No, it is never enough. Because she has a past. Because she is a mainstream celebrity who has lived a very public rock and roll life. They want a spokesperson who is already a flawless saint. They basically want Mother Teresa.
But Mother Teresa is not really available to record daily audio for a smartphone app. And honestly, she probably would not have been great at making viral Instagram reels anyway.
No, she is not available. And it ignores the entire stated point of the app, which is supposedly to help sinners.
Right.
Religion is supposed to be a hospital for the soul. Right. But the internet does not like messy journeys. They only like perfection. They want the finished, polished product, not the complicated work in progress.
Okay, let us pivot a bit to the actual engine driving all of this controversy. We have talked a lot about the people and the theology. Let us talk about the machine. Let us talk about the money.
The economics of faith.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we keep hearing this phrase, pay to pray, over and over. It is a scam. It is a grift. Let us objectively look at the business of Hallow based on our sources. Is it a scam?
Well, if simply making money makes a business a scam, then yes. But by that exact definition, Netflix is a scam, your local gym is a scam, and the neighborhood grocery store.
Because Hallow is a huge company, right?
Right.
It is not just a small mom-and-pop operation running out of a garage.
It is massive. It is officially the most popular Christian app in history. We are talking about tens of millions of downloads. They have raised staggering, eye-watering amounts of venture capital funding.
Enough to buy a literal Super Bowl commercial.
Which is the absolute gold standard of we have too much money, or at least we have very serious corporate ambition. You are dropping something like $7 million for 30 seconds.
And I think that massive visibility is exactly what triggers the reflex for a lot of people. People see a slick Super Bowl ad for prayer right between a beer commercial and a car commercial. And they think, wait a minute, Jesus literally threw the money changers out of the temple. Why is there a venture-backed corporation selling Lent on CBS?
It is a totally fair question. It touches on a very deep historical discomfort we have with the commercialization of this. But to answer it, we really have to look at their actual business model. It is a classic freemium model.
Which is standard for basically everything now. Spotify, Duolingo, Candy Crush.
Right. You can download the Hallow app for completely free. You can use it every single day, forever, for free. You get the daily mass readings, you get the rosary, you get Jonathan Rumi, who is the actor who plays Jesus in that massive hit show, The Chosen, reading the daily gospel to you, all for $0.
So nobody is literally forcing you to pay to pray. The gate to prayer is wide open.
No. The founder of the company, Alex Jones, and please, listeners, do not confuse him with the InfoWars. Alex Jones is a very different, very mild-mannered tech CEO named Alex Jones.
That poor guy.
Yeah.
Imagine having that specific name in this cultural economy.
Truly the most unfortunate branding luck in the world. But this, Alex Jones has been very explicit about this in interviews. He says, the app is just a tool. It is not a sacrament. You absolutely do not need it to get into heaven. He is not out here selling salvation. He is selling a digital.
But the paid version, the specific tier that Gwen Stefani was out there promoting, that does cost real money.
It does. It is about $99 a year.
So Is that unethical? That seems to be the very core of the debate here.
This is where we get into the argument of capitalist pragmatism. Our source material argues this very clearly. Look, Hallow is not just one guy with a cheap microphone recording in his basement.
Right.
They have hundreds of full-time employees. They have software engineers coding the app to make sure it does not crash when a million people log on at once. They have graphic designers making the user interface look beautiful and modern. They have professional sound mixers, the ones who admittedly turned the cello up way too loud in the Gwen video, but still, they are professionals.
And those people need to pay rent, they need to buy groceries, they have mortgages.
Exactly. If you want a high-quality, reliable digital product, someone has to pay for the human labor to create it. We do not walk into a physical bookstore and aggressively demand a free Bible. We fundamentally understand that the paper, the ink, the letter binding, the shipping trucks, that all costs real money. Nobody stands there and calls Barnes & Noble a scam for charging $20 for a print.
That is a really good point. But when it is digital, we somehow feel like it should just magically be free.
There is a massive psychological block there. We feel deeply that spiritual content should be demonetized. It feels dirty to put a literal price tag on a meditation or a prayer. We think, well, the Word of God is free, so the digital delivery mechanism should be free too. But that completely ignores the harsh reality of digital infrastructure. Servers cost money.
Which leads to what I think is the most interesting comparison in all the research we looked at.
Right.
The double standard.
Yeah.
Because we pay for celebrity access all the time in other spheres, and absolutely nobody blinks an eye.
The Mercedes Moné example, this completely blew my mind when I read it. It just perfectly illustrates the cultural hypocrisy here.
Okay, break this down for me. Who exactly is Mercedes Moné?
She is a very famous professional wrestler. She used to go by the name Sasha Banks when she was in the WWE. She is a huge, huge star, very charismatic, has a massive, dedicated social media following.
And she sells a digital service.
She does. It is a premium tech service. You sign up, you put in your credit card, and you get elusive text messages sent directly to your phone from her. You know, life updates, selfies, behind-the-scenes stuff from her wrestling matches.
Okay, like a modern digital fan club. And how much does that cost?
Take a guess. Remember, Hallow, with all its audio, courses, and music, is $99 for an entire year.
Is her texting service? I do not know. Maybe $50 a year?
She charges $99 a month.
What?
Yes. Almost $1,200 a year to get text messages from a professional wrestler.
That is absolutely insane. Who on earth is paying that?
Superfans. It is a highly premium product designed for a superfan who desperately wants that perceived personal connection. But here is the critical thing the source points out. Is the internet exploding with rage at Mercedes Moné? Are people writing viral threads calling her morally reprehensible? Are they saying she is stabbing her fans in the back?
No, definitely not. They probably just look at the price, say, wow, that is way too expensive for me, and scroll on. Or they say, good for her, get that bag.
Exactly. Because it is just entertainment. It is vanity. We completely accept that those frivolous things cost money in a capitalist society. We implicitly understand the rule. If you want exclusive access to the star, you pay the toll.
Right.
That is just the accepted rule of the celebrity economy.
Yeah.
But the very moment Gwen Stefani asks for $99 a year, which is less than 10% of the annual cost of the wrestler's text, for a digital tool that is supposedly good for your soul, people immediately scream, scam.
It really reveals how bizarrely we value things. We are totally comfortable with raw capitalism when it is frivolous or entertainment-based, but we get extremely uncomfortable when it touches anything sacred.
We want our religion to be entirely pure and totally untouched by the free market, even though we live every second of our lives entirely inside. We have this highly romanticized idea of the ascetic monk praying in a silent cave, not the tech developer coding in Silicon Valley.
Speaking of Silicon Valley, there is one other major money connection that the secular critics really latched onto, and it involves a very specific, very controversial billionaire.
Peter Thiel.
Yeah, the mere mention of his name sends absolute shivers down some people's spine. He is a massive figure. He founded PayPal. He was one of the very first outside investors in Facebook. He famously bankrolled the lawsuit that destroyed Gawker Media, and he is a very major, very public donor to conservative political causes.
He is a highly polarized, put it mild, for a large portion of the progressive internet. He is essentially the ultimate boogeyman. And yes, it is true, his venture capital firm led a massive Series B funding round for the Hallow app. They injected millions of dollars.
So for the critics on the left, this was the absolute smoking gun. Aha! Peter Thiel is funding it. This isn't just a harmless prayer app. This is a coordinated right-wing psyop designed to secretly brainwash us all.
It fits their pre-existing conspiracy narrative perfect. Billionaire, conservative funds, Catholic tech app. It basically writes itself. But the source material argues that we really need to understand how venture capital acts. It is called the scattershot.
Paint that picture for us. What is the scattershot strategy?
Billionaires like Peter Thiel and these massive VC firms in general are not sitting in a cramped conference room micromanaging every single company they invest. They throw huge piles of money at hundreds of startups. They are just desperately looking up.
The ones that will blow up and make 100 times return on the investment.
Right. So he is not sitting in the Hallow writer's room manually editing the daily prayer. He is not calling up the CEO and saying, hey, make sure you add more conservative political talking points to today's Hail Mary.
That seems highly unlikely, yeah.
The source compares it to his other investments. He put money into companies like 28 Wellness or Easy Magazine. He puts the money in because his analysts think the company has a solid user base, will grow rapidly, and will eventually make a ton of money. Not necessarily because he is personally dictating the daily editorial content.
But, of course, if you already hate the Hallow app, or if you are already suspicious of Gwen Stefani's motives, seeing Peter Thiel's name on the corporate cap table is just pouring gasoline on the fire.
It is classic guilt by association. It completely confirms the bias that the app must be fundamental because a perceived villain touched it financially.
Okay, so we have extensively covered the ashes, the intense anger from both sides, the venture capital money, the wrestler comparison, and the billionaire. But we have not actually talked about the core product itself.
The actual content of the challenge.
Right. When Gwen Stefani looks at the camera and says, join me for the Lent challenge, what are you actually getting for your $99? Is it just her sitting there saying the Hail Mary 50 times in a row? Or is it her, I don't know, reading her old No Doubt lyrics like, don't speak to God?
That would be pretty funny. But no, and this is the specific part of the research that I think most effectively debunks that whole pay to pray slogan. Because the content inside this paid challenge is not just repetitive prayer, it is serious education. It is highly substantive.
What exactly is the specific challenge she was promoting?
They are going through the Brothers Karamazov.
Dostoevsky novel.
The very same. A dense, 900-page Russian philosophical masterpiece from the 19th century.
Wow, that is incredibly ambitious for a smartphone app.
Yeah.
I remember trying to read that massive brick of a book in college. And honestly, I used it mostly as a doorstop or maybe to look smart while sitting in coffee shops. I am pretty sure I never actually finished.
Almost nobody does. It is incredibly dense material. It deals with incredibly heavy themes like patricide, deep spiritual crisis, the limits of free will, the very existence of evil in the world. It is absolutely not light beach reading. It is not fluffy, feel-good pop spirituality.
No.
And the specific Hallow challenge is exploring this massive book over 40 days, specifically through the theological lens of the prodigal son parable.
So wait a minute. You were telling me that for my $99 annual subscription, I am getting a fully guided daily audio course on complex Russian literature and deep theology.
Essentially, yes, it is a high-level book club on steroids. They have experts breaking down the core themes. They have professional voice actors acting out key dramatic scenes. They are analyzing the intense moral dilemmas presented by Dostoevsky.
That completely changes the value proposition, does it not?
Completely. If this exact same content was packaged as a masterclass on Dostoevsky, literally nobody would blink at the price. People pay $100 for masterclass subscriptions all the time to learn basic cooking from Gordon Ramsay or screenwriting from Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah, that is a great point.
But because it is framed explicitly as a prayer challenge for Lent, people immediately devalue it. They think, oh, it's just religion. Religion is just words. It shouldn't cost anything. They completely ignore the massive amount of intellectual labor, research, and production value involved creating a 40-day audio.
It is fascinating. They are offering genuinely high-level intellectual content, but the religious packaging makes people assume it is just empty, grifting work.
And that brings us right back to the core concept of haloderine. The intense reaction we saw online is not actually about what the app, it is not about the specific words Gwen Stefani is saying, and it is certainly not about it.
It is about what the app represents in the culture war.
Exactly. It represents a very uncomfortable collision of worlds that we desperately want to keep neatly separated in our mind.
We have these rigid little boxes in our head. We want our pop stars to remain secular, cool, and rebellious forever. We want our religion to remain completely private, totally free, and non-threatening to our politics.
Yeah.
And we want our tech businesses to be strictly secular.
And when you violently mix them all together in an 11-second video, Gwen Stefani, Dostoevsky, venture capital funding, Ash Wednesday, it just short-circuits our cultural wiring. It feels inherently wrong to people because it violates every single category we've built in the world.
It really does. You know, we started this whole deep dive by imagining just mindlessly scrolling through the social media. And I think that is really the perfect place to end, because this entire massive controversy is ultimately a product of that feed.
Right. We see a tiny snippet, we read a clickbait headline, we see the smudge of ashes, and we just react.
We judge the ashes before we ever hear the actual message. We judge the price tag before we ever look at the product being offered.
So true.
So here is the final provocative thought I want to leave you with today. We live in a modern era where we eagerly commodify absolutely everything. We pay for Headspace to help us meditate. We pay BetterHelp for digital therapy. We pay Spotify to stream our music. We pay Mercedes Moné nearly $1,200 a year for automated text messages from a wrestler. And we do not blink at any of it.
Because we view those things as completely valid investments in ourselves. Investments in our mental health, our daily entertainment, our personal happiness.
Right. So why is the simple act of paying for a digital spiritual tool the ultimate line in the sand? Why does that specific transaction feel so deeply taboo to so many people? Is it really about the money? Or are we just fundamentally uncomfortable with the reality that ancient faith can be modern, digital, and yes, highly commercial?
It is the eternal tension between the sacred and the transaction. And honestly, I do not think that tension is going away anytime. As long as there are smartphones and strongly held beliefs, they're going to keep collecting.
It's definitely something to think about the next time you see a bizarre celebrity endorsement that makes you do a double take on your feed. Just pause for a second and ask yourself, what am I actually really mad at right now? Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.
See you next time.